Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
All right, let's go ahead and go to Bob Chapman. Bob, we are seeing incredible global developments. Max Kaiser came on yesterday, showed us we're in Bloomberg and other publications. It listed the type of derivative. I know you've had time to dig into it now. Former top silver and gold broker, biggest newsletter ever, went into retirement, came back at theinternationalforecaster.com, helped publish the Gary Allen report for many years, really an icon of liberty. Bob Chapman, for those that don't know who he is, theinternationalforecaster.com. Bob, what exactly is happening in Europe? And the word is from the other patriot wise men, this is guaranteed means collapse now, and that they fully decided to ram the iceberg, and the printing presses are going into high gear, and it's now a race to devaluation. Is Max Kaiser, is Zero Hedge, are all these other people correct, and what does this deal do?
Well, yes, they are. And first of all, it was an unnatural association to begin with. Second of all, it was based upon the stronger members supporting the weaker members, and they knew going in that they were weak and they shouldn't have been admitted in the first place. The rules were upside down. They found out they didn't work. And here they were giving loans out in the form of bonds. And what happened next was that all of a sudden everybody realized that countries like Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Belgium were in serious trouble. They've come up with this temporary solution, I'll call it. And what it is that the banks are going to supposedly default on 50% of the paper from the bonds from Greece. And they may or may not do that. But we'll assume that they will. What should they have done? They should have totally defaulted. But if they did that, Greece, then what would have happened is all the banks would have gone under. And I think probably the best figure that they could have hoped for was 75%. But the bankers control the politicians in Europe just like they do in the United States. So with that said, you know why it was 50%. You said Max spoke about the $517 billion that's being allocated by the European Union members. And then leverage. He's saying, and I've seen it in the news, that it's really over $1 trillion. Leverage, they admit, into derivatives of $5 trillion. So why do they need $5 trillion for $100 billion? Well, they don't. And it's a method of overfinancing. And it's very, very dangerous what they're doing. And the figure really is $517 billion made into $1.4 trillion. And they'll need to do that 3 more times to cover the debt of the entire group. That's where people lose it. The entire number is somewhere between 4 and 6 trillion. We'll call it 6 trillion for the debt that can't be paid by the 6 members of which I just mentioned, the Greeks being the leader of the pack, so to speak. And that's what they're going to end up doing in cycles. So they're telling the world that it's 1.4 trillion and they can handle the derivatives, which turns the European Financial Stability Fund into nothing less than an insurance agency backed by other insurance companies. And they're going to cover the action for about 30%, and the rest, the other 2/3, will be carried by the members. Yeah, I saw a line in the German news that this is backed mainly by German pension fund insurance. Well, I'll give you one worse. I talked to somebody in Frankfurt yesterday, and I have to re-verify this because this is just one source. But I understand in the fine print that the Germans are supposed to commit their gold holdings, which is about 3,400 tons, as a backup collateralization, so that if they are not able to perform, what's going to happen is their gold will be taken away from them. When the German people find out what's being done to them, they're not going to be very happy. I get conflicting reports out of Germany. Some of the people I talk to say that the public won't do anything or say anything, but I think this time it's different. I know the German character. I'm not German, but I do speak it, and I lived there for, well, the equivalent of 6 years. And so I got a pretty good feel for people.
All right, well, Bob, give us your feel on what you think they're going to do when we come back and how you see all this unraveling and how it's going to affect us here in the U.S. By the way, there has been a gunman reportedly firing at the U.S. Embassy in Bosnia. I just watched video of him walking around in plain view with an AK-47 doing nothing. Reportedly after he'd been firing at the embassy, just waiting to commit suicide by cop. And the SWAT team gets there and shoots him once with a sniper rifle. In fact, we'll show you that footage if you're watching PrisonPlanet.tv. If not, go to Infowars.com. So another crazy person. A lot of folks in the media advertises, want to commit suicide? Go out and kill some people while you do it. By the way, if you go into public school, we'll lock it down so nobody can get out. And the SWAT team will sit outside for 3 hours or longer so you can kill hundreds. How's that sound? The answer is arm the school. But, oh, he won't do that. No. It's unbelievable. Going back to Bob Chapman. Bob, you got cut off by the break. We're already seeing our stocks go down. We're seeing our dollar plunge. I thought this was going to fix everything if we just gave trillions more. And I guess you're saying the same thing Max is saying, and I've seen this. It's buried in the news. It's like, well, it'll be 500 billion and then 1.4 billion euros or 1 trillion pounds. And then they're going to use derivatives to expand that into a fund. Sounds like you're saying 4.5 trillion versus 5 trillion. But then meanwhile, we hear Bank of America needs backstopped 79 trillion on derivatives and is being moved into the FDIC fund in preparation. And everybody I know is getting their money out of Bank of America. You've been saying for about 2 years, the word is embassies are ready for bank runs. Where is this going? I mean, am I right to say things are now really accelerating?
Yes, they are. And, you know, they don't leave a crisis unused, so to speak. And that's what they're doing over in Europe right now. And you spoke of tax agents moving into all different countries to make sure that this new tax is paid. Part of what they're trying to do here as well is tighten up a tighter union, so to speak. And in that process, they want to eventually lead to, as quickly as possible, the takeover of fiscal affairs of each country. This is something they did not do at the beginning, which they now know they should have done. But at this stage, and even then, I don't think that the participants, which are the countries, would have put up with it. And that is the takeover of the internal finances by somebody in Luxembourg or Brussels or some such place that would leave the people at the mercy of some bureaucrat somewhere, and they would have no more control over their country. Once you have given up financial control of your country by letting somebody else take over your fiscal policy and supply you with a currency, which they have, the euro. We have the same thing. Let's take Panama. They're using the dollar, the U.S. dollar. So that means that they really have no say ultimately in fiscal and monetary matters. It really is at the mercy of what the dollar does.
But Bob, let me briefly interject here, because you always basically just state it straight out. You don't embellish. But in this case, it's even worse than you're saying. And I've read the articles here. I've heard Bloomberg Radio, CNBC. It's constant. It's wrong they have freedom in Europe. This new super financial order will enforce in the countries. And I saw Merkel saying it yesterday. I read headlines yesterday. In fact, I have them in my stack today where it says they'll be enforcing with EU tax collectors down to the business. So EU inspectors, not just taking control of the country's finances at the ministerial level. They already did that by putting their Goldman Sachs people and others in. They're actually saying now that the countries can never leave once this deal's done. I mean, this is a banker occupation.
What's good about it, Alex, is it's not going to work. This is a complete fiasco. It's another effort to gain time until they can think of something new to put them in a position that they won't lose control. Everything is control and power. The money is just an afterthought. These people can do anything they want at any time at this point in time. And that's why the voters in Europe and the United States and other countries, they have to change the people who are in the Bundestag, the Bundesrat, the House of Representatives, the Senate. We got to get these people out of there because they're bought and paid for.
All right, Bob, stay there. We got a short segment, long segment coming up. We'll go to phone calls. But first, I want to get your forecast in Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, but of course here in the U.S., what's happening with Bank of America, what you see happening in the short and then mid and then long term. Straight ahead with Bob Chapman. Going back to Bob, I want to get to calls here, Bob, but where is this going? I mean, we know set up the global derivatives, implode the world economy, always called for more power, more control, and now they've said Bank of the World, CFR, Trilateral Commission, all these groups have called for it, run by the very same private banks that engineered this, where we pay our VAT, our sales taxes, our carbon taxes. They've got Herman Cain out promoting the VAT and sales tax. Same thing they always do, as if it's conservative. Mitt Romney's now the leader, gun control, abortion, wrote the government health care plan, loved by Al Gore for carbon tax, and Republicans are saying that's who they want. They want basically Al Gore. Where is America going? Because, you know, there is an awakening. I agree this Europe thing isn't going to work. It's not meant to work. It'll steal more money, fall apart again, and then they'll say, we'll just create a total world bank. I mean, I've been saying this for 16 years, not because I'm smart, but because it's in the Trilateral Commission documents, Bob. You were writing about this in the 70s. We're now here. So what's going to happen in your view? What's coming up in the economy? What should we watch for? What's the next big mega bank to go under? What's going to happen with the derivatives in Bank of America?
Well, I don't think you're going to see banks go under at the top level. They're going to be nationalized, and they'll be split like Dexia was 3 weeks ago in Europe, which is a medium to small-sized bank. And they take all the bad assets and put them under the control of the government involved in the United States in this case, and the rest of it will stay in Bank of America. And all those bad assets, after they're liquidated, whatever losses there are, they'll belong to the American people. So again, we will bail out the banks. And I would have guessed that sooner or later, after they've rounded up all the 705 small and medium-sized banks, and they've merged them together, and this will take a while. Once they've done that, they'll all be absorbed into the money center or legacy banks in New York. Then eventually, they'll be merged into one bank, and we'll have a nationalized bank. And I wrote 8 years ago, they're going to do the same thing with housing. They're going to nationalize it, which I won't get into here.
And by the way, they're now announcing that, and then you won't have a choice. It's going to be basically nationalized, and they're announcing toilet flush taxes, all these hundreds, literally hundreds across the nation of new taxes, and everybody will get paid off. You'll still get your welfare check. It's just it won't buy anything anymore. And then that way no one person can get blamed. How long will it take then to hyperinflate the currency down to nothing? How long does this race to the bottom, how long is that going to take now? I mean, you know, let's say if the late 60s were the start of where we're going, I mean, you go back to 1913, but really the acceleration, let's say 1965, or am I wrong? Right up to now, let's say on a scale of 100 to 0, the 0 being Banana Republic, Argentina, or even lower, 100 being at the top, 0 being where we're going. Where are we there?
Well, at the present scale, QE2 and Stimulus 2 should take us next year probably to about 25% inflation. And we're going to have QE3, and that's coming. And they got it in the works, and they haven't told you about it yet. And the Fed will spend maybe $500 billion or $1 trillion buying the bad assets of the banks. Most of them are what are termed the CDOs and MBSs, which are bonds that contain mortgages. And, of course, we don't know what they're paying for them. We don't know what they're worth. And eventually, those that those holdings by the Federal Reserve will be paid for by the American public.